Okay, well, welcome to what I think is session 13 of our journey into the wherever land. Brian, did any of you get a chance to watch Brian's stories that he unfolded, his presentations?
Yep.
Yes.
They are phenomenal. They are so good that I was so depressed that I didn't do my homework. No, they are really good. And as I pondered what he created, I spent time thinking about it and said, all right, there must be an easier way to create presentations than I explained to people because it was involved in consuming and whatever. So the first thing I came up with is if you create another element called list of loops, and you then say, this is a list of loops in this map list. Within the context of Kuma, they call this a widget. So as soon as you say done, look what you get. You get all of the loops in order. Okay? You get them in order because of the way that we did the naming convention. And as you scroll over it, it will actually bring them into view, actually much nicer than the showcase does here. Because in other words, as soon as you get out of sorts or out of space, it doesn't do anything to it. Whereas when you do these, sorry, list of loops. Every time you cross one, duh. I lost my list of loops. List. So I put it up here. All right, so that now has my list of loops so that I can look at them this way. All right, and if you go to another map, so I suppose I go to this map. I don't know why I did that. If I then say I want to add a variable and say I want to add list and add this variable, notice that it has the list of loops for this map. It's because of the way that the variable is defined, so that whichever map this variable or this element ends up on, it will give you a list of the loops for that particular map. So you don't have to create it over and over again. You just have to figure out which maps you want it to show up on. And then it will do this. And the nice thing is, every one that you mouse over, it centers for you and brings it into view. Okay. So from that, if I want to develop a presentation, once I know which ones I want to use, here's an empty presentation. Well, it doesn't look empty, okay. Oh, it was empty until I was playing with it this morning. Hold on. All right. So the first thing I do is I create a slide. I tell it which map I want. I want this map. And then I go ahead and say, okay, let me start with 03 and select this, do a focus. So I have that piece in the middle. And then I say, okay, and now from this, I want to add 04. Oh, sorry, I screwed up. Let me start over again. I haven't practiced long enough. All right. So I end up with the whole map, but I want this map. All right. And I say that what I want to do is I want to start with 04. So I select this and I focus on it. So I now have 04 in the middle. Now I create a new slide and say I want 02, select that. It adds it to the focus and centers that piece. So I create a new slide and say 03. It will then go ahead and add that piece and center it. So each time I add a piece, it actually adds it, automatically adds it to the focus. So I don't have to do it. So now I created the whole presentation loop by loop by loop by just searching for the pieces that I wanted, adding that to the focus, and then making a new piece. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. What's missing? I don't know. I couldn't keep track of my numbers, but does that make sense? Any questions?
A question here, Gene, is last night I was experimenting on mapping something and then I accidentally deleted a portion of it. Is there an undo button to put it back?
As your, let me get out of here. As you're working on the map itself, unable to update you. What's going on? You notice if you change something, notice right down here it says you edited map version X, and there's a little back circle here for undo. You see that at the bottom? Bottom
yep.
left.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So if I happen to select this and delete it by accident, now it says you deleted list of loops from version X. So if I click on this, it'll bring it back, and this will take back the movement that I did.
Okay. Yep.
Now that is only valid while you're in the current session. As soon as you leave the project, your changes are saved, and there's no way to back up. If you accidentally delete something, ooh, oh, that's neat. I didn't realize that. Okay, because sometimes you just end up with unexpected benefits that you didn't realize because of the way that the popovers are done here, with the label and the description showing up in the popover. If you take this whole model and center it and go to list of loops, it shows you the content of that particular element. So you can do that from this drop down without ever having to go to the what's the thing on the left called? The profile page for that particular element. I like that. That's nice. The part that I was trying to talk about before I got confused was that if you where am I? Hold on. If I accidentally delete this and then go away and reload the model so that you can't undo anymore. If you look at the trash, it's just like trash on your desktop. Everything you delete gets put in the trash, and you won't find list of loops here. The reason that you won't find it there is because it still appears on this map. So that if it appears on at least one map, it's not actually in the trash. But if I deleted this one also, which means it no longer appears on any maps, if I go and look in the trash, you'll now see that list of loops shows up in the trash. So if I go back here and say add element and say list, I can click on this, hit enter, and it brings it back out of the trash. It doesn't put it where it used to be, but the content is still there. So when you put it in the trash, it's like throwing a Word document or something in the trash. You can go get it and bring it back out of the trash. And here, within the context of Kumu, you can bring it out of the trash and put it on any map you want to. So that, I mean, if I was looking at this particular map, I could go here and say, add element, list. So I just brought that list of loops out of the trash. And here, these just happen to be in alphabetical order because the loops aren't labeled 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever. So things that, both of these things came to me when I tried to go to sleep at 3 this morning and couldn't. And so I can stay up all night, but I can't do my homework. Any comments about Brian's presentations or about doing presentations, or what would you like to talk about today, if anything? Sorry, Brian's on jury duty because I really wanted him to show you how he did those presentations, but maybe next time.
Earlier in the week, I posted some stuff I did on farmers markets in Colorado by county.
Right.
Really, really interesting to me. And this morning, and Excel is not the catchy way to display this, to discuss it, but and I need to translate it from Excel into Kumu. But what I found was that the counties that experienced growth did not experience it because of any, for the most part, organic growth or innovation that happened from within the county.
What do you mean by growth? Population growth?
Population growth, let's see, change in adults without high school diploma, all kinds of things. So the growth happened because people moved from somewhere else to that county to take a corporate job.
Okay.
For the most part, yeah. What that means to me is for rural food, innovation is going to have to be indigenous to the county, because there wasn't any power in the distribution channel for the producer. It was all at the consumer level. So the farmer market really kind of looks like a miniature Kroger. It's for the convenience of urban consumers. But translating that into this kind of thing here is going to be absolutely crucial for me to present that data to the people that I'd like to present it to.
So when you said it's a mini Kroger's, you mean they're carrying an extremely broad array of things as opposed to just things that they grew themselves?
Well, depending on the farmer's market, yes, there can be a broad array of things, but the logistics, the cost for transport of the product is on the producer. There's no wholesaler in between.
Right, okay.
The consumer. Doesn't exist.
It's from me to you.
Right.
With nobody in the middle.
Right. And for the state of Colorado, the rural entrepreneurship presentation at the law school, oh yeah, this is idealistic, nice stuff. However, if you're really serious about facilitating this, there's going to have to be some intermediate things facilitated. And this is the kind of thing that would be useful to point that out to people.
Okay, there was, I don't remember which state he was in, but I watched a couple of videos about this guy who was sort of out of work and didn't know what he was going to do, so he decided to start a farm, and he was growing, vegetables, and he started selling them to local restaurants. And then what he did, he realized that there was in fact a demand if somebody could fulfill it. And he went around and found out what people would like. And then he enlisted lots of members of the community. So that it ended up being like a co-op. And there was, dozens of families, and each one of them said, well, I'll produce this. And he told them what date that they wanted it for. So they divided the whole thing up, and it wasn't actually a farmer's market. It was farm to store or to restaurant, so that everything they grew, they knew where it was going. So but it put effort on the part of somebody to figure out what the demand could be if it existed, and they ended up growing the things that they knew where it was going.
Right. And he might not have started out to think he was going to mimic Chicago Board Options Exchange, but he ended up just
on a local scale.
Yeah, just doing it. And structures like that are going to arise systematically.
And then I watched a video last night of this husband and wife team north of Calgary who are pulling in 10 grand a month growing green leafy vegetables in their basement. And everything they grow, they know exactly where it's going. They're not out looking to sell. They have orders for everything that they're growing. And they say that they both have full-time jobs, but they work about 40 hours a week growing vegetables in the basement. And they're pulling in about 10 grand a month.
Wow.
And the video was quite detailed in terms of showing how they were what stuff they were germinating and how they were doing it, and the racks and racks of greens, mostly greens of different types that they were growing. And then what do you say? He said, and today was delivery day, and I spent 5 hours doing deliveries. So I mean, there are a ton of good things, innovative things that people have documented on YouTube. You just have to go search through all the trash to find the good stuff.
You want to talk for a moment about this Food Systems Vision Prize?
Food system what?
The Food Systems Vision Prize, what Brian sent around last week?
Okay. Oh, that one. Okay.
Yeah, did you have a chance to read through this?
Yeah, I skimmed through it. I did not read it in detail.
Yeah, I was reading it in some detail. I mean, it is quite engaged and pretty specific in what they're looking for. I mean, the way it has been framed is really impressive because it really looks at a upside down innovation in the food business. Transformational, no, it's transformative potential, and that's at the end of the day what it will take to catch this if it's not too late already. What strikes me here is that they have set up a frame where you will have dozens of teams working on solutions which are all going to be very local by definition, right? Because, well, I mean, they have to work from within their own frame of reference. And so what you may end up getting is 20 different structures that people use to work from within.
But something like the aquaponics video that you sent out yesterday.
Well, that's.
I mean, yeah, it's an example of something that somebody might dream up.
Right, but I think they are more into a holistic approach here, because when you look at the introduction, this is not just farm focused. You know, this is food systems focused. I mean, this is it's as important that people change their dietary habits as it is for the farmer to change their production methods. So this is the first time that I've seen a whole systems approach where they're looking at innovations that cover the entire food system.
So you're talking about growth and distribution?
Yeah, what they are. I mean, the way I read it is they want you to identify, here is the what is scenario, here is what problems are being generated by the what is scenario, and here is how we can here's how we go about changing it. I mean, you may have a problem of diabetes, for example, or you may have a problem of nutritionally empty foods, or or you may have regional supply issues. So teams are supposed to look at, I mean, as it says here, a multitude of processes in vast infrastructure: growing, harvesting, processing, packaging, transporting, marketing, consuming, and disposing of food. So they're looking at the entire cycle of
okay,
food, including the waste component there. So I mean, it's an impressive study, and it definitely will make people think differently, hopefully, about how to input change, to effect change that's not just focused on one thing. No. So in my discussions, for example, with the Regeneration International group, I mean, they want to focus on how to grow food. And I said, it's one thing to focus on growing food and changing that, but how do you sell this? How do you get the wholesale market and the retail market to adjust itself to what it is that you want to do different? So this systems approach to change is what really impressed me on this study. So I sent it everywhere.
Yeah, there was a video I watched that I now can't find, of course.
Yeah, so when you look through Regeneration International, I mean, it's a wonderful organization, and they're doing great stuff. They're linked in with the 4 per 1,000 initiative that came out of the Paris Accord. But they're not really focusing on how do you change behavior of the market? How do you change the behavior of consumers, for example, or the retail sector? So for example, what struck me with this video, that Nobel Prize winning economist that you sent out.
Oh yeah, pretty awesome.
Yeah, so she is exactly spot on. You need to focus on the eradication of poverty in order to secure people, you know, and by securing people, it means securing society as a whole. But we're not doing this. You know, the food system and the way that it is evolving right now is focusing on the upper end of the market, where people have the money to buy organic foods and healthy foods and so on. So to rebuild a grounds up marketplace requires a completely different approach than the one that we have been taking, and the one that is currently predominant in our economy. So that's why I looked at this food systems vision prize as maybe a game changer. It could be a game changer.
Well, yeah, I keep remembering what who built the geodesic dome? What's his name?
Buckminster Fuller.
Yeah, Buckminster Fuller said that fighting with the system is really stupid. You should just go create new things that operate under a different paradigm, and let people be attracted to it, and the old system will die under its own weight.
Right.
So rather than go out and try and, well, like the videos that I watched about people that were doing regenerative farming, their neighbors were going out of business because of what it was costing them to farm in the old ways. So rather than trying to convince them, they were doing something that was obviously different that people could get on board with if they wanted to. Otherwise, the successful people just keep eating up the unsuccessful farms and regenerating them. But it's though when you think about it, there's no magic short-term bullet that changes things. I mean, we don't smoke on airplanes anymore, but it was not a change that happened overnight. It took a long time.
Yeah, I'd like to challenge some thoughts here. So is this really a question of people not adapting to to a sustainable way of production? Or is this a question of people not being able to access this affordably? So I guess those are two different problem sets that is kind of contrasting in my mind right now.
The alternative isn't available and the demand isn't there. It's like you don't have the chicken or the egg.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So, I mean, if there was a demand, somebody would step up to meet it. As some people are developing a different perspective and beginning to do things in a different way and demonstrating to people that it is actually healthier, people are migrating. I mean, we see, if you go into one of the large big box grocery stores today, there's a lot more organic produce than there used to be. Not nearly enough, but it's growing.
True.
And you know, you see free-range chicken, grass-fed beef, cage-free eggs. How much of that did you see 10 years ago? And if you could find it, it was outrageously expensive.
Mm-hmm.
So I from looking at things on a longer-term trend, I see us moving, probably not fast enough. You know, the point that Klaus has repeatedly made is that, you know, continuing along the current path, we're ruining millions of acres of farmland every year because we're farming it in the old ways, and it's getting worse instead of better. So you end up having to spend more money on fertilizer and weed killer and pesticides, none of which are good for us.
Well, I'm trying to work on a hypothetical view where I was trying to share it sometime a few days ago, but I'm still working on the mapping on this. And I guess my point on that is, with the onset of population growth, we now have a lot of competing needs that are demanding the use for example, the land, for our resources. So these competing needs might be, you know, the need for more communities to be developed because of the growing population. So I guess the view that I'm trying to share is we have a finite resources around us. And as the demand grows, how are we gonna generate this traction of sustainable farming when it's getting harder for us in terms of cost-wise to catch up with the mass production in order to feed the total demand of the society? So I guess there seems to be a vicious cycle wherein there's population growth and we have these finite resources to conduct regenerative production. But at the same token, we have a lot of innovative solutions, but these are mostly geared towards mass production. And I guess if you look at the collective effort on this is really just to feed the demand. And I guess well, I gotta go back to my thought process here. I kind of lost on the rabbit hole here. But I guess what I'm trying to say is, with the growing demand, it seems like there's greater traction created on the mass production process compared to what we are trying to promote here, because primarily there's reduction in natural resources and we need to come up with a more efficient solution here.
Well, and along those lines,
Mm-hmm.
you know, with the amount of hunger in the world today, you can look at it as a problem that we need to produce more, or you can look at it as though we need to waste less. You remember what the number is, Klaus, of the percentage of what we grow today is actually wasted?
40%.
Okay. So it's been said repeatedly that there is more than enough tonnage today to feed the world. But the problem is in distribution and utilization. I mean, you know, you walk through, I walk through Harris Teeter in the morning and they're just pulling this stuff off of the shelves because it's out of date and it's all going in the dumpster. It's shrinking. Well, they call it shrinkage.
Yeah, that's. I mean, this issue of waste is problematic, and it's endemic because of the way we have built this food system. I mean, in India, they're losing half their crop in transport because they don't have crates. You know, so they're transporting fruit and vegetables, and it's stacked on top of each other. And by the time it reaches the market, on a truck that goes over unpaved roads, you know, half of it is destroyed. So we have wastage for different reasons in different places. I posted an article right below this Vision Prize that's called "Local Food for a Global Future." If you had a chance to read this, it's a really, really good article. It's right, yeah, it's number 2. It's at the very top. Yeah, number 2. That's it, right? And so what I mean, it's beautifully written, and it really summarizes everything that we have been talking about here. It's written by a Dutch professor and based on a real case study. What this guy is arguing is that we are really, when you look at the food system, it's like an hourglass. Now you have a big production bubble on one side, you know, and then you have a consumer bubble on the other side, but it has to go through this very narrow passage, and that narrow passage is basically corporate controlled systems. 90% of the food supply in the United States goes through this very narrow cylinder, which is controlled by major corporations, which want to handle food in very specific ways. And the innovations that are being queued up in the system are challenging their business models. So the choice is one of two. Either there is a way to convince these giants, multinational companies to adapt their business model, or find ways to circumvent them and force them into either changing or moving aside. And so that really is the struggle that we're facing right now. And so far, you know, is the resistance that you have in the food systems is equal to that in the energy systems. The level of innovation required is beyond some of these business models' capacity to cope. So they don't know. I mean, it's sort of really an existential challenge for, like, let's say McDonald's. You know, how are they going to re-innovate themselves into dealing with a completely different food supply?
Let me respond to a couple of words out of the stream here. Gene said bad for us, and Romer said vicious cycle. Vicious cycles tend to anyway, when somebody gets tired of the pain and violence of it and finds a way to convert it into a virtuous cycle. Bad for us. Now, 50 years ago, when I was still a farm kid, the chemicals that we used, you could just burn the sacks that the whatever it was came in, the pesticide, herbicide, fertilizer, and a face mask. We didn't use that. Not even a little simple cheap one, because you really didn't need to. Well, now it's my impression that you'd better, And you'd better be real careful about how you dispose of that container. You get caught by the EPA, whatever, so much so that in a lot of cases you subcontract that whole pesticide, herbicide, fertilizer thing to a specialist who knows how to stay in compliance.
Right, and though back to Klaus's point about the sensibility of the Food System Vision Prize, looking at the whole system or the complete system or the circular economy, so that it from beginning to beginning, all right, as opposed to beginning to end, it actually wraps around so that it takes into account all of the pieces.
Yeah, so on the in this Vision Prize, they're bringing this loop all the way back to food waste, because right now the way we're handling food waste, it goes into the sewage or it goes into the garbage dump, and then it creates methane. Right? So you
Right.
have these enormous issues. Whereas you could make compost out of it, and you could make a biofertilizer out of food scraps that is highly valuable to be put back into the soil. And so that's where they are going. So we basically know how to do all of this stuff. We're just unwilling to engage in what on the surface is an expensive modification of the food system.
So as John said, when an enterprising person gets tired of the way things are, they dream up a better approach. Takes a, do you ever read the story about Henry Ford being absolutely fanatical about not having waste, which is why from all of the wheels on their cars, all of the wood from after they turned the spokes, he created a charcoal company because he couldn't deal with the waste of all the wood from the wheels. So.
Yeah, so unfortunately that kind of vision in a world of maximization, everything is not visible. So that's what I was thinking. What occurred to me is that in this competition here, the way they have framed the competition is really very technical in a sense of setting up this local. I mean, the way of growing food, raising food, processing it, and so on. I did not, maybe because I was looking too specifically, but I did not see a clear outline or a clear emphasis on going to market.
For the Food System Prize?
Yeah.
Well, that would be weird if they wanted to talk about the whole thing, but not talk about how the distribution of the product itself. And but again, to the other thought that comes to mind when thinking about innovative solutions or operating under a different model, the day is coming when the power companies in this country are going to wake up one day and realize that Solar City is the largest producer of electricity in the country.
Say that again.
The electric companies in this country are going to wake up one morning and find out that Solar City is the largest producer of electricity in the country.
Oh, yeah.
And they're doing it one house at a time. Not trying to do a huge movement. They're just offering people a plan that they can't resist to install something for them and charge them on a monthly basis less than they're paying for their electric bills. no money down. So in terms of, like the people that I mentioned in Calgary that are growing all of these vegetables in their basement, little, and to the comments that were made about the woman and her husband who just won the Nobel Prize in economics for looking at things from a perspective of the only way you can really find out what the answer is doing experiments, so that you know what works and what doesn't work, as opposed to simply pushing on the same old answers that we have done for so long that it's obvious that they don't work. So providing food to hungry people doesn't solve the hunger problem. It just sort of deals with a symptom. And
yeah. What is completely missing, what is completely absent in the market is a serious funded and resourced attempt to change the dietary habits of the low-income population. I had a conversation with the CEO of a group that is working on sequestration practices, and they had listed 6 different ideas on sequestration, and their number one was to turn CO2 into limestone, and the other one was to seed the oceans and stimulate algae growth in oceans. And when they came to agriculture, in their mind, it wasn't really practical, to look at agriculture as sequestration. So we connected via Citizen Climate Lobby. So in my conversation, I asked them, what I noticed here is a complete absence of any consideration for what these things do in their social systems. So we are looking at sequestration like it was a technical issue that can solve technical problems. But each one of these ideas that you have listed here, and this is a pretty well-funded team. The guy was an MIT, was a NASA engineer who went into his own business, a pretty high-powered group of people. As I when you engage social systems in your calculation, then clearly agriculture is spinning way out there. But in his mind, paying farmers $15 per ton of carbon into the soil, that amounts to $15 trillion price tag, because we need to remove 1 trillion tons of CO2 out of the atmosphere. So here you have these very intelligent people spending their professional energy and their resources on solving a problem that is taken completely out of context. And that is so, that is just frustrating to observe, to watch.
Can I ask where you got the copy of this book?
This one?
Yeah.
I subscribed to Academic International.
Oh, okay. Because this book is $59 in paperback. Okay. All right. So where do we go from here?
I may be one of those people that's tired of the pain and violence. I'm looking at several physical situations going on with me, and I'm finding out about a thing called histamine intolerance, which may be a worldwide thing, but when I go to some of my, and here in Colorado, in a university town, you should be able to get an answer fairly quickly. Whole Foods, we don't know anything about that. Maybe I take this and go back to the rural entrepreneurship people and poke the bear a little bit.
Okay. Well, from skimming through this, I would think that reading this would be a marvelous foundation for possibly many things.
Yeah, it's very, I mean, it captures everything we have been talking about. It's amazingly well done. It was written 10 years ago.
Is that long ago?
Yeah.
Oh, you can buy it used for $55. Yeah, July of 2015. So, as I said, the current question that I'm reading and looking at videos and trying to understand is, can I grow enough vegetables in my living room to feed me for a reasonable cost? If you could figure out how to do that, you could scale it.
I threw a question like this out when I had a discussion within the Sierra Club local chapter here, and these are very earthy people, they're very engaged in growing their own food and all of those things. Even to grow your own food, by the time you buy seed and fertilizer and some building materials, to frame in your soil and all of those things, that is already beyond the ability, even with people who have access to land in the first place. So we have maybe 60, 70 million people in the United States, which are always on the edge of hunger. I mean, it's astounding, that over 40 million people depend on food stamps, as incredible as that is. And so for those population groups, growing their own food is probably not the solution or even an option. But on the other hand, when you look at these fast food chains, for a hamburger meal of what, $6 or whatever they're charging now or more, you can absolutely create a lentil stew or a bean stew, or you can do some basic potato and vegetables things, maybe add small pieces of meat to it. The problem is that the business models in the fast food world depend on zero knowledge base inside the unit. They don't have anybody who knows anything about cooking food in any of these fast food chains. What they know is to open a box and put a frozen patty on the grill, push the button which automatically times the cook time and everything. The French fryer descend automatically and lift up again. So they have not built a knowledge base that would allow the decentralization of a more intelligent food system. So that's, and then when you try to work with volunteer groups and have them develop sort of a quasi soup kitchen kind of thing, to go to scale with that, forget it. That's not going to happen in any practical sense.
Two things.
Well, okay. So from what the economist said, that based upon your answer, then must be it's a good idea. If everybody tells you it's stupid, maybe you should pursue it.
Here in Colorado, we would be interseeding the lettuce crop so that you'd end up with a crop for your body but as long as you pay your taxes, there could be a crop for your soma coma, so to speak, either medicinal marijuana or CBD out of hemp. So you got a higher margin crop growing there, which leads me to.
Okay.
So you're not going to be saying, "Wow, $200 for a 20-foot length of 8-inch PVC." In the gold rush in California, who made money?
A few people.
The people who sold
Levi
the
Strauss,
supply.
for example.
Say again, who?
Levi Strauss,
Oh, making jeans.
right, for the miners. The guy that made the money is a supplier. So, sure, help local people, but come up with an integrated home vegetable vertical thing.
Okay.
FedEx delivers your kit, and by Saturday, you're raising lettuce if you've got a southern exposure.
Well,
To help somebody going into business, or to get people excited about going into business, they have to make a living doing it.
yes.
I mean, there has to be money in it, and that's. I mean, it is just extremely difficult to get into. I mean, like the paper that you wrote here about the hurdle run in any local community to get through zoning laws and business permits and all of that. No, I mean, it's just not conducive. It's not intuitive to set yourself up into a business.
So I'll grow lettuce, and Klaus, you can grow the tomatoes. And I see Robert got off of his last call, and we just got a message from Brian, who is sitting in the jury waiting room, having gone through orientation, and he said he brought stuff to keep himself occupied, hopefully productively.
Yeah, so just for clarity on what I've been hearing from the group, it seems like scalability is a major issue here at this point. Is that accurate?
I think so. God, I can't remember the name of the book. Future, something written by one of the founders of Wired magazine. He wrote a book, which I found delightful. In the book, he said, rather than spend an absolute fortune developing this all-purpose rover to go to Mars, why not send 1,000 cheap ones, right, that you could actually build for less? And so some of them didn't hold up well, but you could deal with the failure of a lot of them and still figure out, the same way with, do I want an absolutely all-purpose drone, or do I want 1,000 little drones? In terms of this solution, rather than thinking about something that has a great economy of scale, how about something that's very small and scales well in a distributed fashion? That's just where my train of thought has been as of late. And to the comment that was made, if you could order a grow tower at a very reasonable price. And when it shows up, you set it up in your living room and plug it in, and plant the seeds in a couple of weeks. And you stagger the plantings so that in a couple of weeks, when things begin to mature, they keep maturing week after week after week. And after you eat things, you recycle the part that you don't eat, and continue to replant so that you have ongoing fresh food week after week.
The problem with that is that, I mean, aquaponics, you know, that little clip on aquaponics that I sent around where you grow your own fish and tiger shrimp.
Right.
That is a holistic solution, in that it provides you with all the nutrients that you need. You know, you got your protein, fat, and carbohydrates to some degree, but you can't just live off produce. You need protein and you need fat to have a rounded nutrition. And so typically the bulk of calories that we take in should come from carbohydrates. You know? Traditionally, you have either rice in the Asian cultures, or you have the potato, you know, and bread in the Western cultures. So that's the core load, and then produce is consumed, you know, to a smaller extent, and then you have meat, you know, to get your fat and protein content. But much of the protein comes through legumes, you know, which you can't grow in a hothouse. You know, lentils and beans and that sort of thing. So it's, you know, I think to have fresh produce is super important because of the nutrients content and the, you know, the importance of that in our diet, but it doesn't solve baseline. You have to have grains and legumes.
It doesn't solve the nutritional baseline.
Right.
Okay, but it does solve the community innovation visibility sort of a baseline. The community needs to see movement.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, totally. And the insanity in the way that we grow food right now is that pulses like lentils and beans, you know, legumes are cover crops. You know, and they are vitally important because they bring nitrogen into the soil. It's a natural fertilization of the soil, which is why traditionally you had crop rotations. You know, you would grow your wheat, and then you put a cover crop on it, and the cover crop then replenishes the soil with nitrogen. And so today we're just you know, putting in synthetic nitrogen, which destroys the entire organic matter inside the soil. So the way our diet has been composed right now is completely counterintuitive to the way that nature has always worked. And the 10,000 years of agriculture have evolved into dietary patterns that are complementary with agriculture. You know, so whether you go to Germany or to Lebanon or to Vietnam or China, they all have diets, you know, that are linked in with the rhythms and patterns of agriculture, where these cultures have an innate understanding of what the farmer needs to do on the land, you know, what is available to eat.
Here in Colorado, we have some denial going on, and this is going to sound pretty facetious, but somewhere in the facetious funny end of the spectrum is where innovation comes from. But irrigation water that doesn't go to California, that maybe goes to the Eastern Plains, used to go to the Eastern Plains, is being used to keep somebody's Kentucky bluegrass lawn green. And then we take that cut lawn grass to the recycle center and pay to to dispose of it. So
Yeah.
several breakdowns of logic in that paragraph I just tried to speak.
Yeah. But see, the United States, Australia, Canada, I mean, these immigration countries have a unique history that caused food systems to get completely screwed up. Now, in every other culture, they have experienced catastrophes where people starved by the millions because they had a failure. And some cultures completely vanished, right? The Mayans, like the Khmer, just went bye-bye because they couldn't recover from it. And in other cultures, they were able to recover and then learn from it. I mean, even in the Bible, you have references to what you need to do with crop rotation and letting the land sit idle every 7th year, and they're still adhering to that. And but in the United States, everything is up for experimentation. You know, in the last 40, 50 years, post World War II, experimentations have created, a total catastrophe here. And so now it's how do you get this thing back into synchronization with the natural world? You know?
Well, we started out with plenty of space, and we could simply consume, destroy, and move on. And we're rapidly running out of places to move on to, where, you know, Europe has been living off of the same land for thousands of years. We've only been destroying this place for a few hundred. It takes time to get smarter. I don't know what to do from here. Let's do this. Let me do this. How about you go post some thoughts to this new issue? What does it make sense to do next? Anything? I don't know.
Gene, can you hear me, or am I?
You're here. I got you.
I was wondering if you covered that that YouTube you sent out earlier on the Nobel Prize for Economics, and I liked her intervention where they randomly tried ideas in multiple communities and then step back to see if there was any patterns of success. For example, like what enhanced the parents get their children vaccinated was one example.
Right, and we talked about it a little bit, and we collectively thought that it was marvelous for those who watched it. And rather than, as opposed to believing that we know the answer and continuing to do what we've always done, even though there's plenty of evidence to demonstrate that it usually doesn't work too well, to actually go figure out what the right answer is. And her approach is, you know, you can only figure out that by doing experiments. And you do experiments.
So I really like that. Then it would be empowering for communities, even though there was an option or something that was going on, you know, because there probably is no true right way, but that creates an awareness of what an intervention does or doesn't do, and how it's powerful to look at the big picture of multiple community interactions. So I thought that was I don't know, I thought it was a good insight. Somehow it fits into what we're doing, I think, but there you go.
And did you post it? Yes. I will let you know after I watch today's video. So Brian has posted already. while he's waiting for jury duty. Okay. If you find some, I'm gonna go spend some time reading the book that Klaus posted, which looks marvelous, and continue watching videos on YouTube, and I'll post some. And if I have some thoughts, I'll put them here, which hopefully you will do also. And we'll see what happens, knowing that. Klaus, you're back when?
Well, I'm back in the U.S. I'll be in Florida on the 15th, just before Christmas, 16th or so.
Oh, okay. All right. So,
So I won't be. I'll be off the grid while I'm in.
I'll try and have another meeting on December 3rd.
Okay.
Because I'm gone for the next 2 weeks.
Wow, that's
What I wanted to suggest, so I think there's Food Systems Vision Prize. That really is an amazing, piece of work, and I think, this may warrant a discussion or deserve a discussion. From a systems perspective, have they really covered the systems guidelines, in the way that this thing has been framed? Is this going to lead teams to come up with holistic solutions that cover the entire circle, including supply chain issues and so on, retail issues? So it's a lot to wrap your arms around. 79 pages here.
Yeah, it's far shorter than the book.
Yeah, that's true.
And there are also an awful lot of pictures in this.
Yeah. So it's really, I think it really makes sense to read through this. I enjoyed going through it and understand the assumptions they have been making to come out with this criteria here.
Okay. I'll post this video shortly so Brian can watch it, and look forward to your posts. And if you have specific comments about this piece of work or the other one, you can post them either to the one that they're in, or you can post them to the new one that just got started, what to do from here. Okay.
Very good.
Be well, all.
Thank you.
okay. Thanks.
See ya.
Bye.
Later.
Thank you.